Followed by the local road safety plan and transportation safety grant. So, David, you're going to kick us off, sir?
Thank you, Councilmember, Council President, Council members, and Council President. David Payne, again, City Transportation Planner, presenting this evening on the transportation grants from the past year, and also to talk about the 2025 and 2030, 2025 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Program update. Similar to last year, we'll follow the agenda split into two different sections. The first will be the summary of how we did in the last year's transportation grants with recap and awards. And then we'll switch gears to talk about the next 6-year period, the annual update to the Transportation Improvement Program. We'll go over the schedule of the update, review the performance measures included in the program, and we'll spend some time focusing in on the 2024 grant nominations that we have at this time. So the first part of the presentation, we'll talk about what we did, how we did, and what's next. Each year, we have a number of opportunities for funding and grants. So similar to last year's, last year we had 4 potential sources for external funding. The first was the Washington Legislature, which meets every year, but then last year was an extended session, so there was a little bit more activity than this year. The PSRC, Puget Sound Regional Council, which has grant calls every year. The Washington State Department of Transportation, which has a different set of grants depending on which year. And then every year we have the Transportation Improvement Board. So this past year, odd years are our lesser or our lighter years for grants, if you can believe it. They tend to be smaller. So we'll focus tonight on the awards that we received from the PSRC, WashDOT, and the Transportation Improvement Board. So here we are. How did we do? The answer is we did pretty solidly. Here's an overview of the different locations for projects that we received awards for. And I'll go through them to summarize the 5 briefly, and then we'll focus in on each of them, focus in on each of the categories with their own slide. The first, just presented about 20 minutes ago, the Meet Me on Meeker from Washington to Thompson. I believe I said Willis to Thompson, my bad, but this is an award from Washington to Thompson. And then also, we received notice that the Transportation Policy Board is recommending an award for the Benson Corridor Land Use and Transportation Plan. That should have a little asterisk next to it because PSRC hadn't quite wrapped up. They're going to vote on it on the 25th of January, so we should be receiving the award letter shortly after that, and then we'll bring it back to Committee of the Whole for acceptance, hopefully in February. The third, 76th Avenue South phase, a large award. The fourth project, the rapid reflective flashing beacon enhancements at multiple crossing locations. And then last but not least, the Safe Streets and Roads for All action plan that's going on citywide. So first, and I'm going to have to retire that image in the lower left hand because the Meet Me on Meeker Washington to Thompson section, this may be the final fully unfunded section of the original Meet Me on Meeker from the Green River to the Interurban Trail. But as you can see, document from 2018, and then the section that is complete in the lower left hand, and how they match up nicely, and boy, does it look good. So that was the first award, and then the second is, as mentioned, the Benson Corridor Land Use and Transportation Plan. This was a plan that was originally identified in the Transportation Master Plan adopted in 2021, but it's also as a need for the city to look at. but it also was identified in the first phase of the comprehensive master plan, outreach and engagement that's been happening over the past year, to need to take a look at the corridor with a little bit more of a closer lens, more engagement and outreach for potential nexus between land use changes and transportation services and infrastructure improvements along that corridor. That corridor also is featured highly in two of the alternative land use scenarios for the comprehensive plan. So what this award will allow us to do is, right after the comprehensive plan is adopted, we can springboard right into that conversation for additional focused conversations and improvements. The next category is the Transportation Improvement Board. Council in December heard on both of these, accepted both of these awards. The first for the 76th Avenue South phase, not shown here, but a very significant award to raise the roadway above the FEMA floodplain, to add sidewalks and a bikeable shoulder to that section of roadway. We're very proud and excited to move that project forward. And the second award you heard was the Rapid Reflective Flashing Beacon Enhancement at multiple crossing locations. That's on Military, 116th, and 132nd, shown by the blue dots in the lower left-hand corner. And an example of what that installation will look like is in the top left, where you can see the additional striping, the signs with the flashing beacon, and how that could be implemented. And we look forward to being able to move those forward this year. That slide looks a little noisier on the screen than intended. Apologies for that. This year we were awarded the Safe Streets and Roads for All Action Plan funds, and the plan is underway. I'm happy to put in a plug that the first of the Transportation Advisory Group meetings is going to be held in this room approximately a week from now at 4:30. And there's a little tagline at the bottom. You can see we have an active open page for engage.kentwa.gov for the Target Zero Action Plan. And the image on the left is two different snippets from our engagement material, which will be translated into 6 different languages, as well as the online applications and survey materials will have a translation widget. So the materials, we want to make sure that we're hearing from all sections of the city as we do that engagement. So the advisory group is approximately 7 members, but the meeting will be open to any of the public that are interested, and we'll be sending the same broadcast to all of the folks that were involved in the Transportation Master Plan and our Equity Advisory Board, that they're all welcome to join into the conversation. We want to hear from everyone. Again, next week, this room, 4:30. That will be the first of 3 meetings that we hope to hold over the next 3 to 4 months. And the purpose of this first meeting is explaining or describing the project and the opportunity, and also listening, talking about the safe system approach. A lot of the same material that council was presented, I believe, in September on the safe system approach, and that Eric will be, our traffic engineer will be presenting in his item shortly after this one. A lot of the technical details will be rolling into the conversation for the Target Zero Action Plan. So again, more for that, check out engage.kentwa.gov. Or you can use the QR code on the left. That will take interested parties to learn more about the safe system approach. So that's a summary of the grants that we received in the past year. So now I just want to take a pause to talk about or to reflect on the process of how a typical project goes from a concept in the Transportation Master Plan, the adopted 2021 plan, through the TIP and into the grant applications. How do we get our projects, our capital projects grant funded? So you can see in the shaded out area, that's the cycle that we just went through, basing most of, if not all of our projects on on the policy document of the TMP. And then we roll them into the TIP, either from programs or projects that were listed in the 2021 TMP. Then we craft the grant applications depending on what the different matches are. We match the projects to the opportunity, and then we go out and compete for them. So at the same time as we are updating the TIP, at the same time as we are applying for the grants, we are updating the TIP. So the blue arrow shows what the process that we're about to start for updating the next 6-year window. So the TMP, again, 20-year horizon, concepts agreed upon, goals and programs. And then the TIP is more of the 6-year window that we base our grant applications off of. So with that, I'm going to switch gears now and use the remainder of the presentation time to talk about the 6-year TIP update. We'll go over briefly or review the schedule. We'll take a look at the key metrics from the TIP, and we'll drill down into some of the 2024 grant opportunities that we're seeing. Similar to last year, we have the schedule for the update over the next 5.5 or 5 or so months. First, where we are now is reviewing and briefing on the project nominations. We're talking to the host of our stakeholder groups, including the Kent School District, Puget Sound Regional Fire, Economic Community Development, the Parks Department, and we are revising what the updates, and based on their input and helping to nominate projects and a scan of the criteria for projects from the TIM, from the Transportation Master Plan, and how they meet those 5 different goals in the TMP. We'll be proposing projects for the update that we'll bring forward in February, updating the materials that we'll then take back out to the public in March. An interim step is that we present what those short list of projects are to the Land Use Planning Board, the Kent Bicycle Advisory Board, the Race, Equity, and Diversity and Inclusion Board, and of course the public. Will be back to brief the Committee of the Whole before releasing it to the public for comments. Then we enter the period of listening in March, where we invite the public involvement and feedback. Then based on that feedback and engagement, in April, we'll revise the recommended projects and hopefully bring it back for approval and adoption in May. The updated TIP then for 2025 to 2030 will be due to WashDOT statutorily in the state of Washington in June. So now we pause to reflect how we are doing as a community, or to ask how we are doing as a community. The 8 metrics that you see on the board are a subset of the 13 or 14 that we presented last year. We wanted to show them in a little bit more detail and also focus on the greater themes of how we're doing. The short version, again, similar to last year overall, is that we're showing, or the data is showing, continued progress towards resilience. That's both in mode share and funding. But there's a performance metric you don't see up on the board currently, and that's one related to the goal of safety. Unfortunately, we're not doing as well in safety, but we wanted to make sure that conversation has its own context, including through the Target Zero action plan that we're engaging in now. And you'll also hear more focus on that from Eric's presentation next. But to go through the performance metrics that we are showing in this summary, and all of them will be presented in the draft Transportation Improvement Program once that's posted. Just from the top, we have mode shares. The chief mode share or mode split goal that we have is rolling all of the non-single occupant vehicle mode splits together. And there we're showing quite a jump in improvement over the last year, going from 30% to approximately 36%. That's a pretty big jump, but it's not coming from transit. Unfortunately, the third one on the list shows a drop in transit use to about half, and that is a trend that we are not alone in. And even though Kent is performing and continues to perform better than the region as a whole, transit in general is having to revisit some of our priorities in how folks use transit, and how the service is available, and what it means to use transit. So some of the things that we're hearing from King County Metro on that is more of a focus on all-day services, and a focus on the population that is more transit dependent, of which Kent has a larger percentage. Other improvements that we are showing in performance metrics number 2 and number 3, the percent of trips taken via walking has more than doubled. I know I experienced a pretty big shift in how many trips I took via walking during the pandemic, and it looks like some other folks also are sticking to that. This is data from 2022, so you may be seeing some of the residual effects from that time period. And the fourth one on the list are percent of workers that work from home. So that metric has approximately doubled from our prior reporting year. So approximately 13%, that's a little bit lower than what the region was reporting out last year. I think that also reflects some of the population base that we see here in Kent. Moving on to the funding performance metrics, we continue to exceed or excel from the performance metrics identified in the TMP. Both the number of grants that or appropriations that we're receiving greatly exceeds 3 each year. Our total awards are exceeding an average of $4.5 million. That's a 2-year rolling average, because we have the lower year and the higher year. And then the average award amount is definitely greater than $500,000 per award on average. One goal that we're not quite hitting, that we continue to not quite hit, is the average transportation impact fee collected annually. It continues to be below the TMP target goal of $3.2 million, and that's tied back to development rates and the scale of development when those collections are taken. Any question on the performance metrics before I move on?
I do have sort of a question and a comment. So in the percent of rides taken via transit and had a significant drop, I mean, we know that in Kent, Metro has, they operate single solid use transportation and large transportation doesn't. So, I mean, are they taking into account that for them to say that transportation is strong, yet it is not brought any jobs back since COVID? I mean, when they talk about that, are they taking that into account?
I would say that the conversation monthly at the Regional Transit Committee is robust, related to what Metro is calling their service recovery plan, and that they've seen more significant cuts in the rest of the region than we saw here in Kent. We do have several routes that continue to be frozen, and Metro does not have a near-term plan to bring those back online. But we can say through their ridership reports that we have seen in Kent steadily increases in ridership since the pandemic. But the overall story is not a great one, in that the Metro is not anticipating a return to pre-pandemic ridership within the next 3 to 4 years.
But they understand that part of that is their
Lack of service, not our demand.
They do. I believe that message they are hearing. They've also heard the message that consistency in their service is perhaps more important than frequency, where 2 years ago they were more focused on improving frequency and service area. Now they're just trying to make sure that they can provide consistent service throughout the day, not having cancellations, not having skip stops, or skip services available. It's a challenge for the region. It continues to be a challenge for us, but we are doing better than the region as a whole.
So
Yes, go ahead.
on the consistency question, I'm puzzled there. So is the consistency a problem? Was it due to weather? Was it due to them not having employees to drive the buses? What were the problems with consistency that they weren't able to get the people on board?
Yeah, that's a great question. Metro's been exceedingly transparent over the last year and a half to 2 years with their challenges, primarily coming from staffing and maintenance of the vehicles. So they continue to have challenges both staffing the operations of the bus as well as getting buses, as well as getting the service vehicles maintained back out on the road. So both of those continue to be a challenge, and they've got a number of solutions that they're trying to bring to bear to, and I believe have stabilized that. But part of that stabilization has come at the cost of reduced service across the region.
Well, and one of the things that you didn't mention, but I know that we talk about it often, is the alternative transportation methods with Pingo, and that's being utilized more in Kent than I think it is in other cities across the region. So it's an option for people that have those routes that have been cut that they're not going to see come back. But and we've seen that ridership utilizing that more in Kent than I think we have anywhere else.
Thank you, Councilmember, for raising that. MetroFlex has been a big success for Metro. The Flex Rider system that they piloted, that they piloted with us in partnership 2 years ago, saw a rebranding and a reforming of the services over the course over the last year, and that ridership has done well, including on the East Hill, and I believe one of their hot spots is Kent Ridge High School. The kids have figured out how to take advantage of that system.
Go ahead.
So is that not inclusive with these numbers? Is that separate?
These metrics are primarily from the
Yeah, good.
census, so they're showing performance around 2022, and Metro reports their ridership out roughly at the end of the year. So their conversation is much more specific, route specific, and reflects 2023. So a little bit more of what's happening live.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Moving on now to take a look at a little bit of a deeper look at some of the 2024 grant nominations and potential opportunities. So we've got a two up here on the map on the screen. The map on the right is our transportation improvement program. The QR code is the same QR code that we use each year for the online mapping map book and engagement tool. Currently, it's showing last year's engagement opportunities, or projects, but that matches what's on the screen. So this year we have four grant source opportunities on the left, and I'll take the next couple of slides to go into a little bit more into their own detail. So the first is Puget Sound Regional Council. We're showing two projects. These are both street preservation projects. The first is on 196th from west of 68th Avenue to 84th Avenue South. A very heavily utilized truck route, T1, or a freight route, as the data is showing. Regionally significant. We believe that we will be competitive for that project. And number two is South 212th Street preservation from approximately the Green River Bridge to the 72nd Avenue North. What you're not seeing on the screen are other PSRC applications or other potential projects, and that's because we don't know just quite now. The Transportation Policy Board, chaired by Mayor Ralph, made their recommendation and adopted what the criteria are going to be just Thursday, and that also has not yet rolled through the executive board at PSRC. So it's all happening a bit live, but we'll bring that list back to y'all, back to this board once we have additional projects in the list. The next category is Washington State Department of Transportation, and this is a combination of 3 different grant opportunities. Combined, they are the Bike Ped category, the Safe Routes to Schools category, and preliminary engineering or design for those 2 programs. So we're showing 6 projects on the screen. I'll run through them quickly. The first is 64th Avenue and 236th Street. That's right by Neely O'Brien. The last project cycle, we got some pretty good feedback from WashDOT that they would look favorably, or they could look favorably on a compact roundabout with RRFB crossings at that location. So we're going to, based on our prior application for a different intersection improvement at that location, so we're going to revise that and resubmit. The second is for Reith Road, a shared use path on the west side of the road from approximately 253rd up to Fenwick Park. Number 3 is the shown just off of the map. We had previously designed a pedestrian hybrid beacon at 272nd and 148th. That's just south of Lake Meridian Park. Project 4, the West Hill RRFBs. There are 2 on Military Road. I wrote down the location so I wouldn't forget to note that they are roughly 268th and near 253rd. The 5th project would be for preliminary engineering for the corridor or for a section of the corridor, the Southeast 248th Street improvements. That could be anywhere between Benson, 104th, or all the way to through 116th to 132nd. And last on the list, there is potentially picking up the next stretch of Meet Me on Meeker east of the interurban. There are 2 projects in the Transportation Master Plan. One is for improvements at 6th Avenue, and then there's an additional enhanced crossing east of the interurban trail. Those are going to require some additional coordination with the railroad, which can take some time. So we're proposing that for engineering, but if there's lightning could strike and perhaps more construction funding could be made available for that one. Moving on to the next category, straight from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Last year was the first time we applied directly for Safe Streets and Roads for All planning funding, and then this year we hope to have the prerequisites in place to apply for the implementation phase. That could be anywhere between a $3 and a $4 million grant, depending on what the improvements and solutions are. And we are also still waiting on a second application for Reconnecting Communities pilot application that we put in last year. And we expect them to make a decision on that somewhere in the next month or 2. That would be for Canyon Drive from downtown up to the Y at Kangley. And that would be for a corridor study and potentially more engagement and outreach for improvements along that corridor. There are a number of identified needs along the corridor and projects that could be tied in for improvements there. Each year we mention partnership opportunities, and one of our ongoing partners is King County Metro. And so this year you can see a number of the non-numbered projects. Those are prior success locations where needs have been identified, and then just through negotiations or other projects we've been able to move improvements forward. So we're still looking at a number of potential locations or opportunities throughout the city along locations that are either access to transit or serving transit, and we'll continue to do that this year. This is the final slide of the presentation, really just to emphasize what are the projects or what are the characteristics of a project or that focus in on, that come from the Transportation Master Plan policy document. That's our foundational policy document. What goes into the TIP, the annual TIP update, and then as well as what makes for good solid grant applications are the characteristics you see on the left. You continue to see an emphasis and need on safety, equity, and connections. We continue to see funding opportunities for active transportation and infrastructure preservation, We continue to be very competitive for those, as well as projects that improve resilience. Projects that work within the existing right-of-way, those are easier I say easier, those are slightly easier to implement, so we'll continue to look for opportunities there. And as always, partnerships and regional conversations. And so these are the characteristics that we use to try and light up the transportation projects with funding. Any questions at this point?
Great presentation. As you know, we love grants, right? So keep moving on. Any question, team? We okay? Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Thank y'all so much.
All righty. Okay. We can talk about the local road safety and transportation safety grants again. Eric, Chad.
Quick preamble for Eric. I think we talked about the local road safety plan last year. Eric brought the subject up. He and Honey Maria, our other engineer on staff, have been spending the last 2.5, 3 months crunching the data and the information we've gotten from the state. They keep track of all the accident data. These are reported crashes, so there are a number of crashes we know that happen in the city that aren't reported, which we don't have actionable information about. However, the ones we do have information about, we're able to go through and take a look at the system and try and see where it is we can improve the system, where things have happened repeatedly that might have an engineering solution. And so that's kind of one of the subjects that Eric can cover as he's walking through the data. Very intensive, so please throw the questions out there as it comes along. Otherwise, you're going to hear a lot of numbers over and over and over.
Okay.
Thank you, Chad. Well, I hope not to bore you with numbers too much. All right. But yes, Council President, Council members, I'm Eric Preston, your city traffic engineer. And all right. All right. There we go. I do want to present two things that are very closely related, the Local Road Safety Plan and applying for HSIP grants. HSIP stands for Highway Safety Improvement Program. And so first we'll look at the Local Road Safety Plan. So the plan is a data-driven plan that uses serious and fatal injury crash data and risk assessment to evaluate and prioritize Kent's roadways for traffic safety. We focus on the serious and fatal injury crashes because of Washington State's Target Zero initiative, The Local Road Safety Plan update is required by the state for these HSIP applications. Last time around, in 2022, we funded nearly $1.9 million of projects. The previous round in 2020, we received $1.6 million in grants. So I'll walk you through the individual elements now of the plan. So WashDOT does set the guidelines for the plan, as well as the required elements that I'll take you through. You'll notice as I go that I use the word crash rather than accident. That's on purpose. The word accident does make crashes easier to dismiss, as if no one was at fault, and they can even lead to unjustly blaming victims, which obscures the serious nature of these crashes on our roads. So that's why we use the neutral term of crash. First, we identify top crash types using crash data that WashDOT provides to the city. So we use their data in our analysis and to develop the plan. And then we analyze only the most serious crashes, and we select the most common risk factors. So I'll give you a little bit more detail on each step within element one, but first let's look at an overview of crash data. So when we start to analyze the data, we look at a 5 calendar year window. And so this was January of 2018 through December of 2022. In that time period, there were over 11,000 crashes. This does not include the crashes on I-5, 167, or parts of Kent Des Moines Road that we have no control over. These are only crashes on streets that the city of Kent owns, maintains, or manages. So if you break that down, that's over 2,200 crashes a year, 184 a month, 42 a week, or a little over 6 per day, which is one crash every 4 hours. I'm not going to pause for 4 hours, but that was intentional. That's a lot of crashes. Unfortunately, there were 44 fatal crashes in that 5-year period, with 44 fatalities, or about 9 fatalities per year. That's 9 people each year who didn't make it home. There were 205 serious injury crashes with 235 serious injuries. That's over 47 per year, or almost 4 per month, about 1 a week. By addressing these most serious crashes, we typically also reduce the total number of crashes. During the pandemic, we did see the total number of crashes go down by about 25% in 2020 compared to 2019, but the number of serious and fatal crashes went up by 1 in that same year. It seemed that people drove less, which gave more room for speeding, and those higher impact speeds resulted in more severe crash outcomes. So this really highlighted the importance of managing roadway speed, separating incompatible uses, and achieving target zero. So although the total number of crashes slowly rose again in 2021 and 2022, they're still below 2019. However, while the number of fatal crashes stayed roughly the same, the number of serious injury crashes increased by 26% and 37% compared to 2019. And although this last year, 2023, is outside the 5-year window, early data does show that both fatal and serious crashes are up, along with impairment. So we have our work cut out for us. Now I'll move on to the top 3 most common serious and fatal crash types. So our plan focused on the top 3 crash types, serious crash types, which accounted for 63% of the serious and fatal injury crashes in Kent. You can see the 78 serious crashes, pedestrian crashes accounted for about 30% of all the serious and fatals in Kent. And these do not include bicycle crashes, these are just pedestrians. There are also 45 angle or T-bone crashes, which accounted for about 19% of the serious crashes in Kent. These occur when folks run a red light or make a left turn out of a side street or a driveway. There were also 32 fixed object crashes, which accounted for nearly 14% of the serious crashes. Fixed objects such as trees, fences, utility poles, mailboxes, streetlights, things like that. So these are just the top 3 most common serious crash types in Kent. Other cities may have a different top 3. And you might ask, why did we stop here with these top 3? Well, WSDOT does recommend that we focus on the most common types in the local road safety plan. And 2, we have limited time and resources. And number 3, there is a noticeable drop off to number 4 and below. For instance, rear end crashes accounted for 8.5%, angle left turn crashes were 8%, and those classified as other were 5%. So it drops off steeply. So here we focus on the areas where we can have the greatest impact. So now we'll take a look at the common risk factors that we see when we analyze these crashes. So we see that roadway width, sorry for all the numbers, but they are quite important. The roadway width is a significant risk factor because of the distance or exposure of both cars driving and people walking across them. 81% of serious pedestrian and angle crashes run on roads with 5 or more lanes. Traffic volume is another significant factor, with 95% of our top serious crashes on arterials, our highest volume streets. Roads with posted speeds of 35 miles per hour and above accounted for over 80% of our top serious crashes. We also saw a significant number of pedestrian crashes near bus stops, with 51% of serious pedestrian crashes within 150 feet, and 68% were within 300 feet. A few more risk factors that we found. That in hours of darkness, pedestrian crashes were more common than in previous plans that we looked at. While 51% of all pedestrian crashes occur in the dark, 65% of the serious and 78% of the fatal crashes occurred in hours of darkness. For all crash types overall, 52% of serious and 59% of fatal crashes happen in the dark. Now, these are both significant because only about 25% of the vehicle miles traveled occur in the dark. So crashes in hours of darkness are overrepresented in the data. Surrounding land use can play a role and can be a risk factor. Over 60% of pedestrian and angle crashes occurred in commercial areas. But fixed object crashes were more likely to occur in residential or industrial areas. The type of access control is also a factor, with 55% of the serious angle crashes occurring at stop-controlled intersections or driveways. And most of those, you can see, were caused by the minor left turn or the through movement coming from the side street. We had 45% that occurred at signals which were caused by someone running a red light or otherwise disobeying the signal. Speeding is also a major factor. We found that 81% of the serious fixed object crashes involve speeding as a primary or contributing factor. And when you add in reckless driving or racing along with the speeding, you cover 97% of those fixed object crashes. Yeah.
With the, with the nighttime and dark energy factor,
Is there any technology that adds additional light to the intersection?
There's some experimental things that I've seen on trails where they do have sensors that can expand the light, but then it dims back down. I don't really want to depend on a sensor on an arterial street crossing. So, I mean, it is something that we can look at. We have lots of project ideas beyond the list that I'm going to show you today, and that's one of them, is to analyze and look at our current lighting levels. Are they sufficient? And maybe update our standards. All right. So, well, I guess I already transitioned there. So the second element of the plan, analyze both roadway segments and individual intersections to see where we have these risk factors and prioritize these locations based on those risk factors. So we analyzed 240 intersections on arterial streets and 124 different arterial roadway segments. So a big thank you to Maria on our team for help with that. These are primarily the purple and red streets that you see on the map, our arterials. And after analyzing the network, we create a prioritized list of locations based on the rankings of 3 different measures. So first, measure 1, the total crash rate. This is the total number of crashes on a segment or intersection divided by the number of vehicles that use that facility over the 5-year period. So for an intersection, this would be expressed as crashes per million entering vehicles, or on a segment per million vehicle miles. Measure number 2 is total severity. That's the societal cost of the crashes in an intersection or on a segment. And I do want to be sensitive and specific in how I talk about this, because you cannot truly put a cost on a human life. But we do need to understand the financial impact to society from severe crashes and put a value on that so that we can understand how to make good investments in our system to create the most benefit. So societal cost is determined for the various crash severities by national data published by FHWA and NHTSA, that's the Federal Highway Administration, and the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. Sorry, I might have messed that up. And is the comprehensive cost of crashes of each severity. So we use the same values as WSDOT for our analysis. Measure number 3 are risk factors. So this is a ranking of locations based on their overall risk score, which accounts for both the number of risk factors present and the extent to which they exist and contribute to the risk at that location. So using these rankings, I'll move on to element 3. So in this element, we identify countermeasures, which are improvements we make to the road to improve safety and reduce crash risk. We then develop projects, both spot and systemically, and we prioritize projects by benefit to cost ratio, as required by WSDOT. So let's look at countermeasures first. So what are countermeasures? These are changes we make to the road or strategies we implement to improve safety. They can be simple things like signs and markings in sharp corners, curb extensions, street lighting, guardrails, road diets, RFBs or other flashing beacons like you see in the picture. They can be roundabouts and things like that. We apply crash reduction factors which are developed by research and published in the Highway Safety Manual and a related CMF clearinghouse. These factors tell us that this countermeasure reduces these type of crashes by this percentage. It just helps us do the math. So after we match countermeasures to the location, we can start developing projects. And we can do that by location through spot improvements at a single intersection or road segment, for instance, a roundabout or a pedestrian crossing. We can do it systemically by implementing lower cost improvements over a wide area or multiple locations throughout the city. Things like curve warning signs like you see in the picture, reflective signal backplates. We can also look at high performing countermeasures like the hawk signal you see there and look for places to implement those. We prioritize these based on benefit to cost ratios as directed by WSDOT. And we calculate the benefit, which is simply the societal cost over 5 years, times that crash reduction factor, which gives us a dollar value. The cost is simply the cost to build the project, and the benefit to cost ratio, we hope, is much greater than 1. Hopefully it's around 5 or 10. In the example there, you can see at the bottom, if we have an intersection, let's say, with a $10 million societal cost over 5 years, and we have a countermeasure that promises a 50% reduction, the benefit then is $5 million over that time. Then we have a project that has a $500,000 cost. That ratio is a $5 million benefit to a $500,000 cost. Now we have a 10-to-1 ratio, which is a great performing project. So now let's switch gears and talk about the HSIP grant application. So again, HSIP is a Highway Safety Improvement Program. It is $35 million in federal money that is administered by WSDOT for city safety projects every 2 years. It was the same amount, the same pot of money in 2022, which was up from $25 million in 2020 that was available. Projects are awarded in 2 categories, spot locations and systemically. Kent was awarded $1.6 million in 2020 and nearly $1.9 million in 2022. Those numbers are roughly 5 or 6% of the total funding available for less than 2% of the state's population in Kent. So the good news is Kent overperformed in that respect. And later I will review a lot of the projects that have been funded. So the HSIP grant process starts with the city completing the local road safety plan. Oh, I'm sorry. Go to my next slide. There you go. So the city completes the local road safety plan. And then in early February, the HSIP applications are due along with the plan, and both are submitted to WSDOT local programs. WSDOT selects projects from our prioritized list that they feel have the greatest benefit. Grant funds are then awarded in the summer or fall timeframe, and we've been very successful in funding projects from the local road safety plan through HSIP. In fact, one is currently under construction. The picture at the top there, you can see 108th Avenue and 264th under construction. So now we can talk about projects that we propose to submit in this round. So again, WSDOT selects projects from our list, and this time around we are prioritizing vulnerable road users, so those who walk, bike, and roll, with our spot location projects. However, we do plan to conduct additional analysis with the help of our consultant team on the Target Zero Action Plan, which may result in additional projects that could be used for other grant opportunities. And we are looking for your feedback on these proposed projects as we go through them. So let's take a look. So we have pedestrian hybrid beacons. So again, our focus is on vulnerable road users. I'll go through these quickly and then we can jump to the map. So these beacons stop arterial traffic for walkers and bikers. And they address our #1 most common serious crash type, which is pedestrian crashes. Photo on the lower left is from West Valley Highway at the Valley Connector Trail. And so we're proposing them on Pacific Highway near 244th Street, on Canyon Drive near 252nd, and also on Kent Kingley near Lake Meridian Park. So on the far left dot, you can see that's the Pacific Highway location near 244th Street. That's just south of Lowe's and Dick's Drive-In as a landmark for you. South 244th connects to the neighborhood, connects the neighborhood to Pacific Highway, and there's also a pair of bus stops for the A line at that location. In the middle of the screen on Canyon Drive, near 252nd. So that location, as you're going up the hill, it's past the 94th Avenue signal, but it's before you get to Kent Meridian High School. Okay? So there's also a pair of bus stops there, and we've been getting lots of requests for a crossing at that location, and it bore that out in the crash data. On the far right, this is one of the projects that David mentioned earlier, Kangley Road near Lake Meridian Park. On this one, the city and King County Metro identified this location as a good spot for a pedestrian improvement. And Metro even funded the design, which was completed by city staff recently. So that location also has a pair of bus stops. So, and as you probably guessed, a popular crossing location for those wanting to use the park. So do you, the council, have any comments or feedback on these three locations? See a thumbs up.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Eric. So the third stop right there by Lake Meridian, how far off is from the lights?
From the signal at 252nd, it's, or 152nd.
152nd.
It's about two, I guess you could say 2 blocks, a little over 2 blocks, about
So close to
7
the
or 8
child care center or apartments or?
It's immediately adjacent to the apartments.
Okay.
Okay, so it's between the park driveway and the first public street, which I think is 150th Place. Okay, and so there are currently some bus pullouts.
Yeah.
So it would go essentially right at those bus pullouts, but slightly closer to the park.
Thank you.
Are we good? Okay.
No, I
Oh,
had a
go ahead.
question. So I know that it didn't make this list, but you have it on the future list, up on 260th, to make sure that that's still on the list for either a rapid flashing or a hybrid beacon. This is up on 260th by the trailer park, or the mobile home park, and the apartments on one side, shopping, and all on the other side.
Good evening, Rob Brown, Transportation Engineering. That is on our list, council member.
Thank you.
The current crosswalk does meet the city's crosswalk standards, but we are looking for some funding to put in some flashing beacons eventually.
Okay, thank you, good. And then, not in this report, but do we have any report or any information as far as contributing factors, like whether people were distracted, where to get the bike information, for instance? So, 1, contributing factors to an accident, 2, the bicycle information.
Okay.
So is that information available?
Yes, yeah, and if you have specific questions, I can answer
Okay.
those. Are there specific, like distracted driving you mentioned?
Yeah, I can talk to you about that later, but I do want to talk to you about that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We good.
All right. Very good. Then, so as I mentioned, we've had lots of success funding projects like these from previous local road safety plans. And as you can see here, very long list and busy map on the right. So these are projects from the 2 previous local road safety plans in 2020 and in 2022 that have been funded either through HSIP or other funding mechanisms like Safe Routes to School, WashDOT's Ped and Bike Program, the Transportation Improvement Board, TIB, or Washington's Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods Program. So just quickly going through the list, you can see Wreath Road Roundabouts and Road Diet, which is really 3 projects in one. We have the 108th and 264th mini roundabout. We have road diets in several locations there listed. Pedestrian hybrid beacons, which are just like the ones that we're proposing on this list. Rectangular rapid flashing beacons on 104th on the East Hill. Canyon Drive and Wheelan median curbing for access control. Russell Road sidewalk near Hogan Park. That one is actually substantially complete. And school zone flashers for 7 different elementary schools. So the local road safety plan has been very helpful in getting these funds. So as we close, I do want to talk a bit more about recent crash trends and what we're working on. Even with all these funded projects, it will still take time to see a change in the numbers that we bring before you. To date, only one of those projects that, like I mentioned, is substantially complete, and another is under construction, but quite a few will begin construction this year, in 2024. From the 5-year data we talked about earlier, and you can see it on the screen, we know that we have a lot of work to do. And this 5-year window does not include the crashes from last year in 2023. As a transportation team, we look at crashes every year when the previous year's data is finalized in the spring. And our preliminary numbers, unfortunately, show an increase in serious and fatal crashes in 2023, which, unfortunately, is also a regional trend. The local road safety plan is an iterative process, and we will update this plan every 2 years. However, we are also in the middle of creating the Target Zero Action Plan, which you've heard a lot about. This will focus our efforts even more on reducing serious and fatal crashes in the city of Kent, and the action plan will further help us identify and develop projects to help us achieve our goal. Local road safety plan can be amended with these projects and other findings through a future update. The Target Zero Action Plan I mentioned will be brought to council later this spring, and you'll hear plenty about it. That's all the slides I have, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Very thorough, detailed presentation, right? I think we all agree that, safety is really important, right? So the numbers are pretty high, right? When you look at the fatalities and serious injury, in the over one is one too many. So, but it's nice that we're looking at ways to try to prevent some of these things here too. So that's a good thing about it. Council member, question, thoughts, concern? Yes, Council member Michelle.
Thank you, Council President. Eric, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm wondering if we have any update on the lighting situation for 277th going up the hill. It had been vandalized. There have not been lights there for quite some time.
Yeah, we had replaced the lights on 277th. They've been burgled. It wasn't just vandalism. Initially, it was actually just theft. 2 bouts of theft, and then they did tamper with conduit and ruin a section of the conduit on the hillside. So we're needing to go back through and repair it. It'll have to be a more significant repair than simply putting a wire back in place. So don't have a time frame right now. We've got it in our list of areas to relight lamp, or I should say relight. A lot of the lamps are fine. It's just the wire getting to the lights themselves. So it is a dark area. It's one of the things that, as Council President Boyce pointed out, and the data show, show we're having pretty serious problems with fatalities, and we see a lot of it related to driver behavior, pedestrian behavior. So we really do want to, as part of the PSA portion of this, folks need to be careful when they're driving, follow the traffic laws, be aware when they're walking, rolling, biking, wear bright clothing. Many of these traffic reports that we read through, folks are dark clothing, walking against lights, coming out of dark areas straight onto the road without much warning. So a lot of the drivers are also people that are in these incidents. The pedestrian gets hit and killed. The driver has very little warning. They're traumatized. It's a pretty stark situation. And so a lot of that, as Eric pointed out, we're trying to figure out ways as a city and as an engineering team we can make changes in the roadways, but also it's the users of the system. We really ask that everybody be as safe as possible. And where we will see, we can make improvements, and we'll make those improvements. I know there have been a number of incidents. The other thing that Eric pointed out, 2023 was a really rough year for us as a city. A number of pretty significant incidents, and where we can make improvements, we'll do it. But again, it's just everybody making sure they can do what they can do to help get us through.
Hey, Chad, just thought about, if it's easy, it'd be nice to know. We got our neighboring city, right? I'm just curious. similar type of data? You know, I know we're not talking apples and apples. We talk about Canton, Renton, and Auburn, but I'm just curious about whether we got data we can compare.
I'd let Eric speak to that specific data, but I know as a general trend, we're seeing the same thing in neighboring
Okay.
cities, that everybody's having an issue with it
Okay.
trending upward. As Eric pointed out, during the pandemic, this crash severity went up. So we had, volumes were way down, but when folks were getting accidents, we
Yeah.
tended to have higher speeds, and it ended up resulting in more severe crashes and fatalities.
Okay.
And then as the volumes have gone up, speeds have continued to stay up
Yeah.
a little more than we'd expected, and so we're still continuing to see fatalities and serious crashes.
Thank you, Chad. Team, any other questions? Are we good? Are we hungry? Okay, thank you. Eric, good job. Appreciate it. Chad, thank you. Thank you, team. We're going to recess until 7 o'clock.